Alright, what's going on, guys? Before we get into the topic of today's video, I need to remind you guys that coming up in 4 days is the Taipei game show, where we're going to have an hour-long segment about Elden Ring, where Yasuhiro Kitao is going to be taking questions and answering them about the game. And I'll have the time on screen right now, so you'll need to do your own conversions to find out when exactly that's going to be. But also in other news, it seems like review copies for Elden Ring could be going out as soon as next week. FighterPL tweeted this out this morning, but has since deleted the tweet. So we don't know if it was actually real or if he was just trolling. But either way, it's about time to start taking your own precautions if you don't want to get spoiled about the game. But if you want to keep up with Elden Ring news in a non-spoiler way, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This will be your one-stop shop for all things Elden Ring without spoilers. But with that out of the way, let's talk about why Elden Ring is not Dark Souls 4. Ever since we got the gameplay showcase for the first time for Elden Ring before the network test, there's been an ongoing debate about why the game wasn't just called Dark Souls 4. And admittedly, there's been a lot of fair points going around because the game uses several animations straight out of Dark Souls 3, such as the parry, riposte, certain emotes, and certain weapon movements. And while that might be a fair criticism, as someone who's actively played the network test, I believe this game goes far beyond simply being another Dark Souls. And so I'm going to lay out 5 reasons why Elden Ring is far from Dark Souls 4. The first reason I want to discuss today is that magic takes a much more prominent role in Elden Ring. In the Dark Souls games, magic was sort of a one-off option you had for a certain playstyle and build. If you wanted to use sorcery or faith in Dark Souls, you had to correctly build your character around the idea of what exact weapons and spells you wanted to be using at the end game. And that could be really confusing for a lot of new players, because most of the viable options required you to correctly spec throughout the entire game and end up with a certain stat point. However, Elden Ring takes an opposite approach to this. With the introduction of Ashes of War, the game expects everyone to use magic. And when I say magic, I'm putting it under the umbrella of everything: faith, pyromancy, dragon magic, and sorcery. And so in Elden Ring, if you're wanting to go for a pure kinetic weapon build, you might have to take a few extra steps and go out of your way to avoid spells. Because, at least in the network test, most of the weapons had magic built in, through the new Ashes of War system. Now of course that could be different in the final game, but from what I've heard about spells in the end game, they're going to be much different than what we're accustomed to. But moving on. The next point I want to talk about is that when we journey through the lands between in Elden Ring, we're going to be much less isolated than we have in the past Dark Souls games. And let me explain what I mean by that. The world of Elden Ring, the lands between, is still alive and moving and changing while the events of the game are happening. We're going to be actively partaking in these events and exploring the background of the characters that we see and meet along the way. We're not going to be exploring a dead world like Dark Souls, where all the characters are insane and have lost the touch of their former selves. We're not alone this time. A big theme of the Dark Souls games was isolation, the fact that we felt alone and like we were on this journey by ourselves. And one way that the game achieved that was by having the other characters so secluded and out of the way of the main events of the story. Elden Ring does the opposite. The characters that we meet on our journey are going to be crucial to the main events of the game. Characters such as King Godfrey, Radahn, and Malenia are going to be helping us make our way to the Erd Tree and become the Elden Lord. And if we want to get the most out of this game, we're going to have to pay attention, because the choices we make are going to be very influential for the endings of the game and the way the game plays out as a whole. But this leads me to my next point, that Elden Ring, unlike Dark Souls, is going to be driven by the main story of the game. We have a purpose, we have other characters that are going to be helping us to that purpose, and the things we encounter along that journey are going to be a direct result of what we're actually doing. While in Dark Souls, the main quest was kind of an afterthought, everything we do in Elden Ring is going to have a meaning and a consequence. We'll know why we're fighting the main bosses we fight, and what their main role in the world is. Think of it like Sekiro, where we were invested in the characters, and we knew the purpose behind every step we took. It wasn't just mentioned one time at the beginning of the game and then never again like Dark Souls. We didn't have to go vastly out of our way to figure out why we were doing what we were doing. Now of course Elden Ring is still going to have that obtuse storytelling, but it's going to be much richer and much more apparent than ever before. And that has me very excited, because it allows them to do a lot more than they were able to achieve in Dark Souls. Because we're so invested in these characters, the twists are going to hit that much harder, and it's going to cause us to really question our actions a lot more than Dark Souls did. And I can promise you, once you get your hands on the game, that's something you're going to realize very quickly. While Dark Souls had a lot of replayability, by making different builds and challenging different bosses in different orders, it was kind of limited by its own linear linear structure. Elden Ring is going to evolve this by a mile. The entire layout of the game is based on this foundation of freedom and different experiences every time you play. Miyazaki stated that one of the biggest drawing points about Elden Ring was that you can challenge any bosses in any order, and it'll change the way the game plays out. So when you mix in all the different build varieties, there's almost no chance that any two people are going to have the exact same experience. And this is going to make for thousands of hours of replayability in Elden Ring. When you mix in all the different character quests and things you might have missed on a first playthrough, on top of all the different endings, one journey is not going to be near enough to experience what this game has to offer. And just the idea of that alone has me very excited. The final point I want to make today about why Elden Ring is not Dark Souls 4 is the dynamic and ever-changing world. When you journey through Elden Ring, everybody is going to be playing the game at a different time. This is the first time in a Souls game where we have a real weather and time system built into the game. Things change if you're playing during the day or during night. You could be fighting a boss during a clear day while your friend is fighting a boss at nighttime during a storm that might affect their visibility. It's going to feel different every time you go through it. And now that we have this day and night cycle in the world, it affects certain world elements that happen when you explore. Certain enemies only come out at night, and certain events only happen during the daytime. So this makes exploring the world have to be based on a strategy. For example, there may be a section of woods where you have to sneak past all these big enemies that could kill you very quickly. If you want to go during the day, you'll be easier to detect. But if you wait till nighttime, they won't see you as easily, but there may be more enemies lurking in the shadows. This also ties back into the idea of more replayability in Elden Ring. No two experiences are going to be exactly the same. And that's what's disheartening about people that try to discredit Elden Ring, saying it's not different enough from Dark Souls. If you're an experienced Souls fan, you're going to know right away how different this game is once you get your hands on it. Maybe from the outside looking in, from someone who's never played the Souls games, it might seem very similar. And from that perspective, it is. The game is built on the same foundation, but it's what it does with that foundation that makes it so vastly different. Elden Ring feels like its own entity. We're in a new open world with an entirely different atmosphere, and I can tell you, if you are someone that's on the fence about buying this game because it's not much of an improvement over Dark Souls 3, I can't explain how wrong you are. There's many different other reasons why Elden Ring is different from Dark Souls that I didn't mention in this video, and if you have more, leave them down in the comments below. Because everybody's perspective is going to be different, and I'm interested to see what other people think. I didn't even talk about horseback combat, which adds a whole nother layer to the style of the game, or even the new verticality options thanks to the jumping. But I hope you guys can see my point on this, and that's going to pretty much do it for the video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.